I don't know if I have a burp in me. It's
I
kind of
don't
weird.
either. I ate Moe's earlier, so I might throw up if I burp.
Go ahead. Signal this episode by vomiting profusely all over the microphone. You heard it. There it is. That's the signal. Here we are. Christmas time is here. I will give $1 to you right now, Keith, if you know the second line of that song. Christmas time is here.
I just want to cheer.
I wouldn't know it either, so I guess that's right. You get $1.
That's correct. Thank
Good
you.
for you. I couldn't tell you what it is.
I accept PayPal and Cash App.
I know for a fact you do not. This is the bowl episode of Running Out the Clock.
Whole episode.
It's your boy, your friend. Keeping my name from the last time, my little text name down here from the last time we recorded, because I'm still really proud of my Amy Grant Delpit nameplate joke here. But your friend Joseph Craven is here along with Big Red of the house,
Big Red.
Keith Harkins. Keith, what's up?
Chilling. You?
Not much. I don't know. I didn't have anything else to say.
LOL.
LOL. Have you seen the commercial with the guy who drives to this friend's house? And it's
Yes.
just like, not much.
Not much. You?
If one of you jerks ever drove to my house to try to reply to a text in person, I think I would homicide you. Just right there on the doorstep.
Which is totally an appropriate response.
Yeah. What
get
sort
it.
of psychopath?
Especially if you show up and open the door and it's just someone saying LOL.
Right. Like that's almost as bad.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Like you just text the guy, I'm coming over. It's simple. All right. Here we are. We're going to talk about bowls now. Now that we've gotten the important discussion out of the way, we're going to go ahead and jump into we're going to run through every single bowl that an SEC team is associated with.
I thought we were going through every single bowl.
Every single bowl. This episode will last until New Year's. So
You'll miss a few games.
yeah, we will. We will. But we'll make up for it with quality reporting. Nah. The analysis will be subpar, but the enthusiasm will be through the roof. Keith, I think it's only appropriate that we start this thing off the way that we always start off episodes here on Running Out the Clock. Let's talk about the Knowles Bowl first and foremost. That's the official name of it.
Bowl.
Yeah. And here's in particular the best aspect of Florida State making it to a bowl game. It's not the fact that they're getting a chance to play against the Arizona State Fighting Herm Edwards. Edwards is? I don't know.
That's it.
It's not the fact that they're playing against Arizona State or anything. It's the fact that it's not even the fact that they like low key were one of the few programs in the country that had a 1,000-yard receiver and a 1,000-yard rusher in the same year. Good on you, Florida State, for that. Didn't even know. Not the fact that they were able to have better success, questionably better success at least, with like an interim head coach. It's not about the fact that they're bringing in one of the top up-and-coming coaches in the country. No, the main reason that this is interesting is because they're playing in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. That's right.
We should all be so lucky.
Apparently, Tony the Tiger specifically is the sponsor of the Sun Bowl, not Frosted Flakes. All right.
Nobody really knows that Tony the Tiger is the mascot for Frosted Flakes. They just know Tony the Tiger, right?
I don't know. I feel like most people know what Tony the Tiger is. Like they know.
I didn't.
Whenever he says they're great, people know he's talking about his cereal.
Cheerios, yeah.
Okay, you're right. He's a bee with tiger stripes, and he's always like, they're great. Yeah, exactly.
And then he flies off into a flower.
Yeah.
No one knows this.
So this is, the Sun Bowl is the second oldest bowl game in the country, the Rose Bowl being number one. And it has the sponsorship of just Tony the Tiger. And that's it. So there you go. So Tony the Tiger brings together Florida State and Arizona State. Arizona State 7-5, went 4-5 in conference. And Florida State, as we all know, is going through coaching change, but kind of doing that interim coach like boom that tends to happen after a firing and an interim job, all that sort of stuff. So I guess the first question is, Keith, is there a spread set?
There is.
What it is then, Keith?
Arizona is a 5-point favorite.
I'll give you my first impressions, not knowing a huge amount about either program right now. I'm perfectly fine with Arizona State being the favorite here.
Yeah.
There's typically a couple of directions that an interim leading a bowl game can go in terms of what Florida State has in front of them. It can either go surprisingly well, a la Mississippi State versus Louisville Part 1 from 2017, where Mississippi State gelled behind beloved interim assistant coach Greg Knox and freshman quarterback Keaton Thompson to rise, through adversity, step it up. There were more emotional components going on there to that game. I can't see the emotional components for Florida State. Kind of feel like Arizona State's got the edge, and I'm going to pick the Sun Devils. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like that sort of interim coaching boon thing only works well when the school is still looking for a head coach and the players are kind of playing for the interim to maybe kind of like, hey, we like this guy. Let's see how high we can get his chances of becoming, like the guy.
Right.
If they can take that tag off of him. With Florida State, they, once they fired
Willie Taggart.
Yeah.
Hey,
blank on his name.
It's not gone but not forgotten.
Yeah,
he is
like
gone
a month
and
ago.
Forgotten. We're done with Willie Taggart
Yeah.
talk.
They reeled off a couple of wins against BC, who I can't remember, but they might have been ranked at the time. I know they were pretty good. And then beat like a high school team before getting murdered by Florida. And so, as we all know, Florida State has hired Mike. Is it Norvell or Norval?
Norvell
Redenbacher.
Yeah. He's hired the show The Orville on Fox with Seth MacFarlane. They've gone ahead and brought them in to lead the program.
All the entire cast.
Yep.
Yeah, and so
the entire cast is actually just Seth MacFarlane doing a whole bunch of voices.
Yeah, pulling a Martin Lawrence.
Yep.
Wait, nope. Eddie Murphy. Whatever. It's a weird night.
Somebody here is ready for Bad Boys 3 to come out.
So ready. I've been singing the song all day long. Yeah, and like Arizona kind of had a really weird end of the year. They lost to UCLA and USC, who are not particularly good teams, and then beat Oregon and Arizona, who are particularly good teams. So they're kind of riding high. Florida State's kind of riding low. Not really sure what Florida State's inspiration here is. So I feel comfortable going with the Sun Devils.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Arizona State is going to enjoy. They like their coach more. Exactly what you're saying. I think I just can't see what the motivation would be for Florida State outside of, just trying to get ready for next season. And I mean, do bowl games really help in that regard? Like, bowl games are kind of pointless things. You make it, and that's the sign of congratulations. You had bare minimum a mediocre year. That's your reward.
Which is already better than last year.
Yeah. You weren't one of the worst teams in the country.
Congratulations. You
were one of the
fine.
multitude. Yeah, you were one of the multitude of just okay teams. So
take pride in that. Sleep well tonight.
I love it. Okay. Speaking of the multitude of just okay teams, we have 10 different matchups involving.
It's a bunch.
Yeah, it's so much. 10 different SEC matchups going on here. All right. Which really stands out as a bunch of these teams being just okay, but just okay enough to make the offseason. I mean, the postseason. Everyone, I hope, makes the offseason. It's
I don't know,
kind
man.
of a requirement.
There were some rough seasons. Some of these guys might have folded the program.
Yeah, they're just done. They're just done. So what we've got right now is we've got the first one up. We're going to go and we're going to make these predictions and our discussion here in chronological order of when the games actually happen. So we're going to start with the first one. None of them are before Christmas. So starting up on December 27th is the first SEC bowl game appearance. And it's actually low-key a historic Big 12 showdown over here between Oklahoma State, the fighting Chuba Hubbards, and the Texas A&M Rich Uncle Pennybags. That's their mascot.
That's it, yeah.
Yep. So this is in the Academy Sports Plus Outdoors Texas Bowl. If Academy is going to put Sports Plus Outdoors as like their official name, I'm not going to call them Academy Sports and Outdoors. I'm going to call them Academy Sports Plus Outdoors. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, either go full on ampersand or just don't do it.
Don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the Academy Sports Plus Outdoors Texas Bowl between Oklahoma State and Texas A&M. Keith, is there a spread set on this game, sir?
There is. It would appear that as of this moment, Texas A&M University is a 7-point favorite.
7 points for the Aggies. All right. All right. Well, let's talk about this one just a little bit. A&M, an up and down team this season, winners of 7 games. But at the same time, I mean, what was their best win? I mean, honestly, they didn't win against any ranked opponents. They didn't win really against anyone that necessarily stands out as a difficult opponent.
And almost lost to Arkansas.
Yeah. So a close victory over Arkansas, a close victory over Ole Miss.
I mean, is their best win over like South Carolina?
It's got to be. I mean, I don't know what
just because South Carolina beat Georgia, like that's the only thing that matters here.
I guess so. Like that. It's not great. A&M there. Oklahoma State on the flip side there. Of course, I mentioned a second ago, led by the great Chuba Hubbard, almost 2,000 rushing yards this season. Not bad. 1,936 right now, 21 rushing touchdowns, 6.2 yards per carry for Chuba, going up against an A&M defense that let's see here. I'm trying to see. I'll look up exactly how many like they yardage and all that they give up. I'm trying to find their total defense here. There we go. A team that looks like gives up 130 rushing yards a game. Okay. So, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State. Your quick thoughts on this one, Keith Harkins?
Yeah. I don't think anyone's going to be comfortable calling Texas A&M an offensive powerhouse. Kellen Mond has been very up and down all year, mostly in the middle or down, not a whole lot of highlights. I think we saw that coming pretty much right away when everyone was looking forward to that Clemson rematch, and that was kind of where Kellen Mond shined last year.
Yep.
And it was a complete disaster for him and the team, and
not great.
Was never, like just didn't have that flair that he did last year, even if last year wasn't, world beating or anything. They Texas A&M beat who they were supposed to beat and lost who they were supposed to lose to. And Oklahoma State had a really good end of the year. Their last 5 games, they beat Iowa State, TCU, Kansas, West Virginia, and lost to Oklahoma in their finale. Pretty good year for them. I would. It's really odd to me though that Oklahoma State is an underdog in this game because most of the stats would point to favor Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
I guess it's that SEC bias, man.
SEC bias.
But yeah, I would actually feel comfortable saying that that the Cowboys pull the upset here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it. It's you've got a team that this is interesting. I didn't realize this, but the offense for A&M was like much more of a rushing offense than I realized. Like they typically on average completed about 32 passes a game. That isn't necessarily, but attempted 36. But then rushing actually averaged a clean 32 rushing attempts a game. So like they were a pretty even,
very balanced
offense. And I really thought that they were doing. Now, obviously, some of those rushing attempts, or a lot of them, were through the legs of Kellen Mond, because he is a pretty mobile guy, and they want to take advantage of that. But I think that's very interesting. One thing that really stands out to me, though, is that Oklahoma State comes into this matchup ranked. They're only 25th in the country, but they come into the matchup actually ranked. And as I mentioned a second ago, A&M lost to every ranked opponent that they played this season. I just don't. I'm with you there. I don't feel comfortable picking the Aggies in this one necessarily to deal with Oklahoma State's rushing attack. But also to deal with the pressure of just having to play a ranked team, So I'm with you on that. I mean, A&M's considered record-wise and like statistic-wise on sportsreference.com, which is where I like to go to for all my sports stats and all of that. But they're ranked as like the 44th team off of like record and like where they fall statistically, all of that. And Oklahoma State's ranked higher than that, 32nd. And of course, Oklahoma State is actually ranked 25th in the current AP polls. So I think I'm going to go with the Cowboys as my pick in this first SEC matchup here. Keith, are you picking the Cowboys as well?
I'm picking the boys.
It's America's team.
Yeah.
I forgot, by the way. Did you say Arizona State was your pick on the Arizona State-Florida State game?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I didn't write it down, so I wanted to make sure. Just wanted to make sure. All right, the next one up is, oddly enough, the biggest one involving an SEC team, but it happens on the December 28th. And that is the first round of the quote-unquote playoffs, which is not a real playoff. It's a championship game that happens to have a buy-in game. That's all it is. But the Louisiana State University Fighting Tigers go up against the brand new Notre Dame, aka the team that keeps showing up in the playoffs, but no one actually wants them to show up in the playoffs, Oklahoma. This is an interesting matchup because for a while there, it kind of looks like Oklahoma was not going to make the playoffs, and then a few teams lost, a few things went, just the right way, and Oklahoma pulled it off. Beat Baylor again, secured their way to that fourth spot there in the playoffs. Now their reward for making it is going up against the best team in the country in LSU. The question here, of course, is Oklahoma good enough to pull off the upset? We know Oklahoma has Jalen Hurts, Heisman candidate. Oklahoma has CeeDee Lamb, one of the most electrifying wide receivers in the country. But that LSU has the Heisman winner with the widest margin of victory. And they've got a very deep recruiting core. So, Keith, give me your thoughts. Oklahoma and the Louisiana State University Fighting Tigers.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that statistically, Oklahoma had a better defensive year than LSU, and that the surprising aspect of that is that they play in the Big 12, which is notorious for having very good defenses and terrible offenses.
Yep, kind of the stigma surrounding them.
Yes, that of course being a joke, and in which the Big 12 usually has, like defense optional games, and just everyone wins by a score of 54-49. But it's not all that surprising because we know that LSU has had injuries basically throughout the entire year, starting very early against Texas. What's really interesting is that their total yards per game, get ready, Oklahoma, 554.2. LSU, 554.3.
LSU leaps and bounds better.
So LSU clearly has that statistical category in the bag.
Leaps and bounds better. Yeah, no question.
We, of course, know how LSU season went. They are undefeated, usually winning by a lot against, a lot of pretty good SEC teams. Oklahoma's one stumble came against Kansas State, which we all saw coming.
Of course. Yeah, easy to predict that one.
Especially fans of history, where we all know that if the Sooner Schooner topples over, they lose the next game on the road to Kansas State. And it just so happened that they were on the road against Kansas State the next weekend.
That's the most random 100% true so far statistic I think I've ever heard in my life, and I love it. I just love it. I am in love with it. I want to buy it a nice dinner. I want to take that statistic out for drinks afterwards.
Yeah,
be a gentleman.
Just a real classy evening with it.
Yeah, exactly.
But after that game, they kind of seemed to struggle a little bit. They beat Iowa State by 1. They beat Baylor in that really fun comeback game, 34-31. Had some trouble against TCU, handled business against Oklahoma State before, again, having trouble with Baylor and needing extra time to beat them.
Yep.
There is something to be said about finding ways to win games, but there's also things to be said about losing to Kansas State and almost Iowa State and almost TCU. So
right.
Right. So while the statistics are very close between these two teams, I would say that the eye test would very heavily lean in LSU's favor. I don't see a way, especially with time to prepare and to get more healthy on defense, that they lose this game.
Yeah. I didn't ask you.
LSU's a 13.5 point favorite, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just saying, I didn't ask you what the spread was. When we opened it up, I assumed LSU was the favorite, but I wasn't sure by how much. So, yeah, I mean, top to bottom. Okay, this is not a good LSU defense. Like, we can just go ahead and flat out say that. It's not a good one.
This is kind of the anti-LSU team, honestly.
It just is, which is why they're successful on a national scale. I mean, let's just be honest here. That is 100% why they're being successful on a national scale. But they're coming up in the clutch offensively. Mm-hmm. When a big play needs to happen, Joe Burrow makes the big play, or one of those receivers, makes the big play, or when one of them doesn't, Clyde Edwards-Helaire makes the big play. And here's a fun fact I learned not terribly long ago, that the H in his last name, you don't say it.
Helaire?
Yeah. It's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I've been pronouncing it Clyde Edwards-Helaire because that's what I had heard before
like
then.
But normal person.
Right. Yeah. So the word is that, speaking of Edwards-Helaire, the word is that he will not play against Oklahoma. So that is a little bit troublesome because what I was going to say, my point of bringing that up is that it shows how this LSU team's been successful because at all points in time, they have someone on offense who is ready and able to pick up the slack, who was ready and able to step up in the big moments. Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he had a great game against Alabama.
Mhm.
They couldn't stop him. He would plant and spin, and you knew he was doing it every single play, and no one could tackle him for some reason, So really, he will be missed in that regard, but you still have, outside of him against Oklahoma, you still have a quarterback who threw for 4,700 yards, a quarterback that set a record for pass percentage in a single season. And you've got wide receivers like Justin Jefferson, 88 receptions for 1,200 yards. Jamar Chase, 73 receptions for just 2 yards short of 1,500 on the season. Terrace Marshall Jr., 37 catches for 545 yards. Big Thad Moss, guy that a lot of people only talk about because he's Randy's son, But Thaddeus Moss, the tight end, he still pulled in 38 catches for 435 yards. They spread it around a lot, and it makes it difficult for defenses to deal with. LSU is just kind of the best team in the country. I do still believe that. That is not SEC bias, simply because I despise this conference.
If there's one thing that you can't accuse any of us of being, it's bias towards the SEC.
Right. Yes, very much so. I'm begging for someone to take it down. But they're just really good. And I don't know who picks up the slack after Edwards-Helaire. I mean, you've got John Emery Jr., the touted freshman, but I just don't know if he's ready for the big stage or not. They're still a team, even though their new offense, that loves to have an every down back there, and it's difficult for a freshman to do that. So I don't know if that hurts them or not. I said earlier in the year this was, I thought, the best Oklahoma team in the Lincoln Riley era. Even with those slip-ups against Kansas State or almost slip-ups against Iowa State, all of that, I still think it was the best Oklahoma team. I just don't see them being quite good enough to pull off an upset, though. So I'm going to stick with LSU.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate for them to have such a good team, adding Jalen Hurts, which seems unfair because he's a video game character.
How about his season? My goodness.
Yeah,
all props to him for getting out of Bama.
Yeah.
And going somewhere that actually was going to use him right.
And as weird as it is to say that Oklahoma had a very unfortunate 11-1 or 12-1 season or whatever it was, they just happened to be this good at the same time that LSU becomes a literal juggernaut. And Joe Burrow wins the Heisman, because if he didn't win it, it was probably going to be Hurts, because he's just had a ridiculous season. And of course, Oklahoma maybe fares better in the playoffs, but congrats on a good season. You get to play LSU.
Right. I will say this about my LSU prediction here is I could pretty easily see it being like a 10-point victory and LSU not covering the spread. Because I think with LSU's injuries on defense and the fact that their defense was just kind of okay all year, I could see it being a high-scoring game. Higher scoring. So I'm picking LSU. Are you picking LSU?
Yes.
We're both picking LSU, and we're moving on to December 30th. 2 games that we both will be paying close attention to on December 30th. I will be paying close attention to it, I guess, in the Seattle-Tacoma airport, trying to fly back home from the Pacific Northwest. So that's great timing. But the first one up being the Bullpuppers of Mississippi State University. Their highly touted, no, just kidding, terribly touted rematch against the Louisville Sluggers. Ain't no Lamar. The big names aren't going head-to-head in this one, man. There's no Lamar Jackson. There's no Keaton Thompson. The big names.
All the big household names.
All the big household names. I don't know. Actually, you might see Keaton played slot wide receiver in the Egg Bowl. So sure.
Oh, good for him.
Yep. He just showed up. His only time he's played all season, he shows up and catches a pass for like 3 yards. It was the most random play I've ever seen. But Mississippi State, Louisville, what's the spread on this one, first of all, Keith?
State is a 4-point favorite.
Interesting. So far, all of the SEC teams favored.
Mm-hmm.
But Mississippi State, I don't know. You got two teams that probably on the up and up, recently hired, being led by two of, when they were hired at least, the more well-respected up-and-coming names in coaching, between Joe Moorhead, the offensive genius behind the Penn State success, and Scott Satterfield at Louisville, or going to Louisville. You like that? Learfield Sports. So Satterfield's first season, 7-5. This is coming off of a 2-10 year last year. So an instant, quick, turnaround there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is a Louisville team that has looked just okay going up against a Mississippi State team that struggled a lot of the season to look just okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Keith, what you thinking about this matchup right here?
I think when you just look at both teams, you kind of think that, maybe Louisville has the edge a little bit, mostly because they've had such a good turnaround this year. Surprisingly good in some of their games.
Yeah.
But they've got a decent offense, but their defense is really bad. They've given up almost 450 yards a game, which is hashtag not good.
Thank you for hashtagging that for all of our young listeners to be able to really feel connected to us.
Understand what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
2 of their last 4 games, they got blown out by Miami, which isn't very good, and Kentucky, which is maybe the most one-dimensional team in the history of college football. And
that dimension is named Lynn Bowden.
Right. Let him set all kinds of records. Super fun to watch, but not if you're a Cardinals fan.
Right.
And on the other side, you had State, who, depending on who you talk to, had a disappointing year. I guess just statistically, you go from 8-4 to 6-6. Getting your bowl eligibility win on a
missed extra point.
Weird game in which a guy turned into a dog and cost his team the game.
Yep.
As
expected.
The funniest thing to me. The fact that he did that, and Moorhead did the smart thing and took the penalty on the PAT instead of the kickoff, which I just assumed he would do, taking it on the kickoff. That's what you usually do. But no, he took the gamble and took on the PAT, and it paid off, and it actually paid him off because he got a $500,000 or a $50,000 bonus or something like that for winning that game.
It's an amount of money that I would take at any point in time.
100%. It's 50,000 is really low, so it's probably 500,000.
I don't know,
but yeah, it's statistically neither team is very great. Both teams had kind of up and down years.
Yeah.
It's essentially a pick'em game because it is a 4-point spread, and that's really, and that could change between now and then. But purely for the fact that Louisville allows over 200 rushing yards a game, and you've got Garrett Schrader and Colin Hill.
Yeesh.
I feel comfortable picking State to win on that alone.
That is a great point there. So Kylan Hill, of course, announced that he is going to leave the program after this season. But as far as I know, I think he said that he's going to stay and play in the bowl game. I think the players that Mississippi State, they have two particular players that have announced they're going pro early. Cornerback Cameron Dantzler and running back Colin Hill. And I don't think that either of them said they're going to sit out of the bowl. So I think they're both going to play, but I could have that wrong. But either way, you're right. Kylan Hill is the leading rusher in the SEC. I don't think it's a stretch to say this season he was the top standout running back in the SEC. Had a couple of bad games and still was able to do well in the other games to take the rushing title on the season. So
in the same conference as guys like Clyde Edward-Helaire and DeAndre Swift,
right,
two really good running backs, and this guy from Mississippi State ends up taking that title. So
kind of keeping the tradition of the Anthony Dixons and the Jarius Norwoods, or to lesser extents the Ladarius Perkinses and the Josh Robinsons. Mississippi State knows how to bring in the good running backs, and Kylan Hill was just an outstanding running back. So if he's playing, he's running all over Louisville.
It's gonna be bad.
Yeah, and Louisville showed it against Kentucky that they're not going to be able to stop a high-powered rushing attack, a modern college option rushing attack. That being said, there's two things here that stand out to me. One of them being that we still don't really know what type of bowl game coach Joe Moorhead is. Last season's bowl game was kind of one of those fluke games that you just can't tell much about. Dan Mullen had a lot of times an ability to just kind of win some bowl games, to get teams prepared for it, to game plan well. Joe Moorhead had the misfortune of going up against an Iowa team that apparently could do no wrong. And I do mean that quite literally, because they were not flagged for a single penalty the entire game and somehow neutralized pass rushers like Montez Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons first round.
Definitely not a single hold or maybe even a trip or anything like that. Nothing. It
was weird. So an anomaly of a game. So we don't know still if Joe Moorhead knows how to coach a bowl. A lot of times he's not really risen to the occasion quite well, still trying to learn how to be a head coach in a lot of ways. So that's not a good sign for the Bulldogs. But what is a pretty good sign is on my favorite sports website, sportsreference.com, they do something just called the simple rating system. Okay. And this is just kind of trying to assign a quick numerical value on how to rate a team's season. It takes into consideration strength of schedule, average point differential, things like that. And it puts it into an average season is just a 0. Anything that's a negative, that's a bad season. Anything that's above that, it's better than average. And Louisville, for example, last season, 2-10, they had a negative 9.8 on the simple rating system.
Seems fun.
Yeah. This season, they've bumped it up 2.4. All right. Mississippi State, a 5.6. So Mississippi State, by the simple rating system, had a slightly better year. And, I agree with that. I always felt like Mississippi State was going to be an at best 7-win team this year. The Kansas State win or game was supposed to be a win, so that was supposed to be the 7th win. But they won the other games that I expected them to win. And I thought that they were at worst going to be a 6-win. So it's hard to see this as a disaster, in my opinion. But that's because kind of always thought they're going to be 6 or 7 wins. They did that. This could end up being the 7th win. Sure. I'm going to go ahead and pick Mississippi State and say that it's I'm actually just going to pick Kylan Hill. That's it. I'm just going to select if Kylan Hill plays in that game, if he's not sitting out,
win of the game.
Yeah, then Kylan Hill is going to be the team. So that's what I got. That's what I got. That's who I'm picking. Who you picking?
I'm gonna go with State, just for that same reason. Louisville soft on the rushing game, on the rushing defense game, and State had the SEC's leading rusher. So those two things together do not net out to 0.
Yep. And Mississippi State, that freshman Garrett Schrader is a slippery dude.
Yep.
Like
he's going to provide problems too.
He would routinely have like 3 pass rushers swarm him, and then all of a sudden he's just like, I'm over here now.
He would transform into a helicopter and fly away.
It was so weird. It was like the opposite of Nick Fitzgerald, who was like, if I'm like flatline speed, I'm going to outrun you every time. But like, I'm not going to break, like, I'm not going to slip out of your grasp probably, It was weird. It's just super weird. Okay. On the 30th, this is an important one because we have Keith's favorite team, Florida, going up against Chandler's favorite team, Virginia.
Yeah, the Wahoos.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So the legend says. So Chandler's Virginia Wahoo. That sounds right. And Keith's Florida Gators. This going head to head. You got the Gators, who were pretty good in the SEC East this year. You got Virginia that actually won their side of the ACC this season, which not saying much because quite literally
an impressive feat.
Yeah, a different team has won that division like each year for like the past decade. It's so weird. And then on the other side, Clemson wins.
Right.
So Florida and Virginia, what's the spread there, Keith?
Florida is a 15-point favorite.
Good grief. Okay, so let's take a look at the teams. What makes Florida a 15-point favorite, you think?
I, as a noted Florida fan, have not ever really at any point this season been super confident in Florida's offensive abilities, but they still somehow managed to do enough to keep defenses on their toes. And I think that is a very Dan Mullen trait. Just how well he spreads the ball around. So like
future Dallas Cowboys coach, Dan Mullen.
In the very near future, apparently. But yeah, like you can't really focus on one aspect of their offense that you can nail down other than their rushing game, which has been notoriously terrible. But as a way to get around that, they found a way to kind of what they call like it's an extension of the rushing game where they do those quick wide receiver screens, and basically you're just running speed sweeps, but with the forward pass. To guys like Kadarius Toney and those guys who are incredible athletes. Virginia had a pretty good year. Their defense is not great. They allow over 350 yards a game, allowing 26.5 points a game. I just think that when you look at it statistically, like Florida has them outmeasured in every category. And like Virginia managed to lose to Miami. Again, they're not very good. They lost to the aforementioned not good Louisville team.
Yes.
Before getting absolutely dummied by Clemson, who was clearly trying to prove a point.
Yeah, that was angry Clemson. That was Clemson saying, why is no one talking about us this season?
Right, absolutely.
Which is a great question. Why was no one talking about Clemson this entire season?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing because like I think Trevor Lawrence kind of struggled early, but like they didn't have any close games.
No, I mean I guess that's why no one was talking about it.
UNC 21-20 but like all their other games, like the Texas A&M game wasn't nearly as close as the final score said. Like they were just murdering people all year, but I guess because of like how dominant also like Ohio State and LSU were being, Clemson's kind of like old news, they're so 2018.
Right.
That the sexy conversation was about the Urban Meyerless Ohio State Buckeyes and this sudden, powerhouse LSU led by former Ohio State quarterback Joe Burrow.
Yep.
So
I mean,
anyway,
that's exactly it, though. They weren't sexy this year. There was no drama around them.
No, they just lit the entire ACC on fire and never looked back.
Like the past couple of years, we've been looking for some sort of rival to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And Clemson has been that. Clemson has slowly become the best program in college football, or at least trying to become that. And we don't need to have that search anymore this year because LSU was good and was able to be that rival to Alabama again. So we didn't have to look anywhere outside of the conference. The drama was there. The drama was no longer this Dabo Swinney versus Nick Saban discussion. It was Alabama and LSU once again, which is always a big ratings machine.
Always great, yeah. And last year Clemson had the benefit of having the Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence drama of kind of what should have happened and what did happen with that. But yeah, so but yeah, getting back to Florida and Virginia,
oh yeah, that's right. That's the game we're talking about.
I don't feel comfortable with Florida winning by 15. But I've said that all year in games where they were heavy favorites and they've managed to cover because they just somehow get things done.
Yep.
But Virginia won some big games. They've got a decent offense that can kind of surprise you. That's kind of fun to watch. And so I still think Florida manages to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a very close game.
Yeah, I think the only area in which I'm going to disagree with you is I could see this being a big Florida victory.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I just could. As what you mentioned, Virginia Tech has won some good games, but also Virginia Tech doesn't necessarily excel in any particular area.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of haven't. And good on them for beating. I said Virginia Tech, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Virginia doesn't really excel. Good on them for beating Virginia Tech. I was thinking too far ahead, and because I was trying to get to. I think that they kind of exhausted the last of their reserves
of their magic.
Yeah, in that trying to break that streak against Virginia Tech, and I think that spells, kind of disaster moving forward. But it also means
magic and spells. I get it.
There you go.
Good one.
There you go. But it also means this was a great season for Virginia.
Yeah.
They won the division. They beat their rival.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great season for Virginia football. And even if this, ends poorly, I think that Virginia needs to get out to what is this? This is the Belk Bowl. Oh man, I didn't even mention what bowl this was, right? No, this is the Orange Bowl. Sorry.
Orange Bowl, yeah.
I didn't even mention what bowl this was. Man, get down to the Orange Bowl. Go to Florida. Yeah. Enjoy the Orange Bowl. Have a great time. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great bowl to be in. Good season for Virginia. Good on them. Probably going to be, I think, a big Florida victory. But because Dan Mullen just doesn't really lose games like this.
That's true. I was thinking the same thing last year when they went to play Michigan, mostly because the recent history between Michigan and Florida hasn't been kind to Florida.
Right.
And they just handled it. They murdered Michigan.
Yep.
So it could be the same thing here. I should probably be a little bit more confident in, guys like Kyle Trask, who, while unspectacular, has been very, very, very solid.
He has been
good,
playing sort of in a system that's not built for his style of play too, so
which is interesting because he's absolutely flourished in it,
Yeah, he really has. But even then, I mean, Felipe Franks was doing well, and that man looks like he's never sprinted before in his life,
It's just the weirdest thing.
It's so awkward. So awkward. Rest in peace, Felipe Franks' college career. Florida college
Florida
career.
Football, huh?
Wherever he ends up now.
You heard it here first, folks. Felipe Franks is no longer playing college football.
He's never played. If I had it my way, he'd never see his way on the field again. No, I'm kidding. I like Franks. He kind of looks like a goblin. He's kind of an odd looking guy, but
does.
I like him. All right, let's get to the Belk Bowl then. Best social media account in all the bowls.
Just the most wonderful time of the year.
Yep. Rivaled by the Outback Bowl. Outback has been stepping it up, but Outback has been stepping it up by allowing random people to be the Bloomin' Onion mascot on the sidelines. And I think that's important. That's a significant thing. But the Belk Bowl, this is where we have the Wahoos of Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has to be Wahoos also. If Virginia's Wahoos, why can't Virginia?
If you're in Virginia, even West Virginia, you're a Wahoo.
Right. Yeah.
It's just science.
West, East, North, South Virginia, all of it.
Southeast Virginia. Yeah.
Wahoo country, baby. But the Virginia Tech Wahoos and the Kentucky Krogers, I don't know. Kentucky football sponsored by Kroger. Go head to head. And I believe you said, Keith, this is the lone matchup in which the SEC team is not favored. Is that true?
That's correct, but it's a 3-point favorite pointing toward Virginia Tech.
So it's still close.
Yes.
Still a close one, just not great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A little bit, I mean, these teams, what do you say about Kentucky that we haven't already said, so far? Lynn Bowden is a phenomenal football player.
Just one of the best, really.
Yeah, just a great football player. Lynn Bowden also very obviously better as a wide receiver than he really is as a quarterback.
Even though he was a former quarterback.
He was. That being said, in his little bit of time, I mean, he's posted no, actually his passing numbers aren't good. So I was going to try to praise his passing numbers. They're not good.
He played 6 or 7 games as quarterback and still couldn't pass Sawyer Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Sawyer Smith had almost 700 passing yards and Lynn Bowden had 330.
Also, Lynn Bowden still led the team in receptions and yardage.
Yep.
Well, so Kentucky's passing game isn't he can't pass to himself. I don't really know what Kentucky fans want.
Yeah. Who is he going to throw it to? So anyway, it's great on Kentucky for being able to make it to this bowl game. But still not great in general going up against Virginia Tech, who probably wants a little bit of revenge because their regular season ended with a disappointing upset loss to their rival Virginia that they always beat. But Virginia Tech was in the top 25 at that point in time when they lost that game. Virginia Tech's losses on the season, a loss to Notre Dame, a loss to Duke, but that's a difficult basketball team. Everyone loses to Duke basketball at some point, right?
Not just a loss to Duke. Murdered by Duke.
Yes, actually, Duke. David Cutcliffe showed no mercy, apparently, against Justin Fuente. But they opened things up with a Boston College loss. So ACC was weird this year in general. Let's just talk about that.
Yep.
But losses to BC, Duke, and Notre Dame. 3 pretty good teams. There. And then, of course, that loss to Virginia that gave them their 4th loss. They were looking at a potential 9-win season before Virginia upset them.
Yep.
So Virginia Tech is a pretty good team. I mean, do you see any way that Kentucky does pull this one off?
I don't know if I would ever really underestimate Lynn Bowden Jr. Bowden. Bowden. Benjamin Bowden Jr. And Virginia Tech has had a pretty good rush defense all year, so it's kind of strength on strength. Although Kentucky rushed the ball on average for 275 yards a game. That's stupid good. But Virginia Tech only allows 123 rushing yards a game. So not a whole lot's going to happen through the year. Kentucky had statistically another, really good defensive year, even though they lost a lot of their kind of superstar caliber players. I don't see this being a game in which either team really runs away with anything. The over-under is only set at 47.5, and I would probably pick the under on that. But I'm going to go with Virginia Tech just because of the one-dimensional nature of Kentucky and the fact that Tech can actually answer that on defense.
Yeah, I wonder if Tech is going to be like missing any, like, if they're going to be missing motivation because of the way that they, lost that rivalry matchup there, or if that's gonna,
Georgia.
Yeah, or if that's going to give them motivation.
Mm-hmm.
That's always hard to predict. I think that this is. I think that Justin Fuente is a good enough coach where he's going to prepare the team well and have them motivated, have them ready to go to kind of redeem themselves and end on a good note.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Kentucky loses this game, then they say, whatever, like we beat our in-state rival Louisville. We suffered through a whole bunch of injuries. We had to play our best wide receiver at quarterback.
Yeah.
Kentucky looks at it and goes, hey, you know what? We can still hold our heads pretty high there. Virginia Tech, if they lose this game, then they look at the whole season and all anyone sees is you lost to Virginia, then you lost in a bowl game to a wide receiver. Not
a team, to a wide receiver.
Just a wide receiver,
running the ball.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like they have to feel the more or the bigger motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because of that, then I've also got to go VT on that one to kind of try to prove a point, probably more than anything else. I don't know. That'll be a weird one. Yep. But let's talk about another weird one. And that is on January 1st, the VRBO. Quick, Keith, do you know what VRBO stands for? I mean,
very righteous butts.
What does the O stand for then?
It's silent.
Oh, okay. So the Very Righteous Butts Citrus Bowl between Michigan, featuring Ole Miss quarterback Shea Patterson, and Alabama, featuring high school quarterback Mac Jones. Keith, what's the spread?
The spread is Alabama is a 7-point favorite. So
Alabama 700. Yeah. You said 700? Is that
700,
right?
700, yeah.
Alabama by 7. Interesting. I guess the first question here is, I mean, both of these teams have to view this season as pretty disappointing, at like bare minimum frustrating, most likely disappointing, right?
Yes. Probably more so for Alabama than Michigan. The most disappointing thing about the Michigan season is that they didn't fire Jim Harbaugh, which they wanted to happen for the last 3 years now.
Get him out. It's garbage.
It's terrible.
So, yeah, Alabama 2-loss team here. Of course, their season, talk about seasons ending or regular seasons ending on an embarrassing note.
Yeah.
It doesn't
just really embarrassing.
It doesn't get much more embarrassing than your coaching staff accidentally screwing up and putting too many people on the field and like no one catching it. Yeah, just yikes. Bad ending there in that Iron Bowl. Loss for Alabama, but Michigan was who all did they lose to? They got beat pretty hard by Ohio State.
As a tradition.
as per tradition. Like, no surprises there.
Yeah.
Penn State got them earlier in the year. Penn State was a good team this season.
Yeah. And Wisconsin back when they were still kind of running.
Yeah. When Wisconsin was good, they beat them too. So a 3-loss Michigan team that never really ever seemed to challenge as like a top contender this year.
Yeah.
Against an Alabama team that thought that they were.
Yeah. And let's also not forget that Army game with Michigan. the double overtime.
Oh my
Michigan
gosh,
win.
yes.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that one. Wow. Oh, Michigan.
Oh,
Buddies.
and then only winning 10-3 against Iowa in the new, apparently, El Assico.
Yeah, apparently. Buddies. Oof. All right. Shea Patterson, of course, just kind of underwhelming ever since he got to Michigan.
Yeah.
I say that like he was ever all that amazing at Ole Miss either.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, I don't know what they were expecting from Shea. Like, he's a fine quarterback. Like, he may be even good, but he's not a game-breaking talent that's gonna carry a team to a championship game.
Yeah, he kind of doesn't even quite, at least this season, meet the criteria for being good. Like, he's a little under what you want a college quarterback to be percentage, like completion percentage wise. 2,800 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 INTs. That's an okay ratio there.
Yeah.
It's
not good. It's
exactly. He just had the tendency. I remember watching him so much at Ole Miss. He just had this tendency to just telegraph interceptions.
Yes.
He's probably not doing that quite as much, but he still is not quite making the right throws, it seems. Still, I mean, as I mentioned, 57% completion percentage, which is okay. But at a college QB, you really want 60%,
Yeah.
in order to be good.
It's a shame that, noted Shea Patterson fan, Chandler Allen, is not here to really deep dive into why he's a bad quarterback.
It's Chandler. He doesn't deep dive into things. He just kind of says he sucks, and then we move on.
He has spoken.
There's no need to elaborate. He sucks. But yeah, he's not doing well. It's kind of makes you wonder about the whole 5-star recruit rating system thing. But I won't get on that soapbox right now. But on the flip side, like Mac Jones, obviously Mac is on a better team, in general, better offensive line, that sort of thing. But Mac was able to, in his little bit of time that he played, put up decent, 1,100 passing yards, 11 touchdowns to 3 interceptions on almost 70% completion.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that was just in a very small amount of games, but not too bad for Mac on the season. The question there, though, is like, is he ready to really lead Alabama in this little bowl game here? And more importantly, are either of these teams ever really going to be all that motivated? Are they going to be able to get up for this? Nick Saban, can't be happy to miss the playoffs for the first time ever. So, like, what are we going to see? What do you expect to see between these two teams?
Yeah, I would expect Nick Saban to more prove a point in this game than for Jim Harbaugh to do anything. Michigan is basically in the exact same spot this year as they were last year, and they got absolutely trounced by Florida. And this Alabama team is way more talented than last year's Florida team, even with Tua gone. They've got those 3 wide receivers that are just insane.
Yeah. Great.
Najee Harris, 1,000-yard year. Maybe
really picked it up as the season went on too.
Yeah, like one of the more under the radar 1,000-yard rushers. I think the story for Alabama this year was that their defense wasn't your typical Alabama defense. Really interesting this year that, we've talked about it, that LSU and Bama game was kind of the anti 2011 version of those teams. Yes, way more exciting. But yeah, I would expect Bama to win this game, even though we've been closer to the Alabama season than a lot of the Michigan fans. it was funny after the game was announced, hearing Michigan fans basically be like, no thanks. We're just going to forfeit and bow out of this and just hit the showers early. Look forward to next year. I think they're just really worried about catching a pissed off Saban.
Yeah, and that's the big question. Is pissed off Saban going to be able to get the troops motivated?
Yeah, or is he going to field 12 players again?
Yeah, or is pissed off Saban just so pissed about missing the playoffs that he's not going to, really have the team going the way that they should be?
Yeah,
and I'm going to lean a little bit more towards, we've never seen Saban at Alabama just like be out of the playoff picture here. They tend to lose, at least one game a year, obviously sometimes two. They just always have in the playoff year, and then rebounded towards the end of the season. I think that this is the beginning of kind of the Alabama time dwindling down some. In dynasties change a lot faster in the modern game.
Yeah.
Teams get real good for a brief period of time, and then eventually, because trends change very frequently, it's not quite as trendy for recruits to just go to Alabama because Alabama offered. Nowadays, recruits are like, actually, like Clemson, look, it's great. LSU looks like they're having a great time. Let's all go back to LSU now, that sort of thing. So I'm just
choosing to go to Texas A&M for some reason.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. I mean, whatever. I'm going to say that this is a completely unexplainable and inexplicable Michigan victory. That's my pick.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm going with the Wolverines here for no real reason. And then it causes the school to extend Harbaugh's contract until he dies.
That is a point for Team Chaos.
Which I'm
kind of behind it. Yes.
I'm always about it. Who you got? You picking Bama?
I'm going to go with Bama. Michigan, for like the last 3 years, has always looked good while being kind of bad.
Yep. That is a great way of putting it.
It's like, wow, they're winning a bunch of games by like 30 points, but man, when they lose, it is just fireworks.
Yes, it is. Gorgeous fireworks.
This is beautiful.
Oh, man. All right. The next one up, we got 3 more to go through. The next one up is another January 1st game. This is the Outback Bowl with the Bloomin' Onion just all over the place. He covers the whole field. Great lateral movement by the Bloomin' Onion. Just a real impressive athletic specimen.
Mm-hmm.
This is where Minnesota rows their boats down to take on their natural landscaping rivals, the Plainsmen from Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota and Auburn in the Outback Bowl. What's the spread on this, Keith?
I'm pretty sure someone at ESPN's key got stuck because this is also a 7-point Auburn favorite.
So a Auburn by 7.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about this one now. Auburn is kind of the quintessential team this year that has been not necessarily good, but still winning.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on Auburn? Like, were they actually good? Like, I don't know what to say about it. Obviously, good enough to be ranked highly. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, Auburn also had the distinction of being ranked highly early, and then their losses were to like top 10 teams.
It's funny how that works. How the preseason polls sometimes just kind of help you out. Yeah.
There was that really close victory against Oregon where if that cornerback hadn't just fallen over for literally no reason whatsoever, they would have lost the game.
Yep.
They lose to Florida on the road. They lose to LSU on the road. They lose to Georgia at home. Like, you can't really fault them for any of those losses. Like, those were against, as we found out, really good teams. And then, of course, there's that hilarious victory against Alabama. They were, I think, who we thought they were, and that we knew that they had just a really, really good front seven.
Yeah.
A good enough secondary, and an offense that everyone thought was going to inexplicably go through a true freshman in Bo Nix, that ended up going through two really good running backs, as is Auburn tradition. Like once again, they just kind of randomly have a 1,000-yard rusher.
Yeah, which is significant because it was just like last season that Auburn didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher.
Like a decade or something.
Yeah, over a decade, if I remember correctly. It was a long time. So, yeah, it's weird. This is an Auburn team that it reminds me of two different teams, okay? And I said this earlier in the season, but it reminds me of Mississippi State of last year. An offense that was hit or miss at best, but a defense that was dominant. That's pretty clear. The major differences between this team is that they were able to pull off, like the Oregon victory. Now, granted, that's a beginning of the season non-conference game. Those are crapshoots. That's a coin flip most of the time. You flip a coin, it doesn't matter like those games. You don't really learn anything about what either team in the early season neutral site games. You just don't. But then from there, lost to Georgia, losses to LSU, lost to Florida, and an almost lost to Alabama. If not for a couple of things going their way against Alabama or the Hail Mary pass at the end of the Oregon game, we're looking at an Auburn team that is an 8-win team. Or if both those games go the other way, I mean, like they easily could have, that's only 7 wins for Auburn. And it just kind of, in the end, kind of just looks a little bit like Mississippi State of last year. Just they were able to do a few more things right. And that's what differentiates them there. But what they also remind me of is the Auburn team from just a few years back that ended the season with big upsets against Georgia and Alabama. And ended up then going and playing against national champion Central Florida in the postseason.
Yep.
And that's what they also remind me of. A team that maybe punched above their weight a little bit, but won some games that they really probably weren't supposed to win, but were able to pull it off.
The question with this game, though, is Minnesota actually above Auburn's class or weight class or whatever, right? Like, I think they had a surprising year by basically anyone's standards because it's Minnesota. And yes, it is impressive to win 10 games going into a game against Iowa, having just beaten Penn State, which was, like a franchise defining win.
Yeah.
But their games before that, they beat some truly terrible teams. They weren't really tested. And they only beat South Dakota State 28-21, went to double overtime against Fresno State, won by 3 against the vaunted Georgia Southern, whatever they are.
Wildcats?
Sure.
That might be Georgia State.
Yeah, let's see. The Georgia Southern Screaming Falcon Eagles.
Screaming Falcon Eagles. You got it.
Yeah. The middle of their season is filled with dominant victories against the teams like Illinois and Nebraska and Rutgers, Maryland.
Yeah, man.
Just really powerhouse Big Ten teams. So, even though they have a better record than Auburn, I think Auburn has the much tougher strength of schedule and better quality victories.
So are you thinking Auburn wins this one then?
I feel like Auburn wins, but like you said, Auburn's in a quote unquote unimportant bowl game, and by unimportant I mean basically any bowl game that isn't either the playoffs or what was the BCS national championship game.
Or the Citrus Bowl.
Yes,
which is 41.
They seem to maybe lose a little interest. However, I will say that this year may be a little bit different. Just the fact that they got into a New Year's Six bowl by beating rival Alabama, they've got to be feeling pretty good about themselves.
They got to be, but they were feeling pretty good about themselves when they went up against UCF as well.
It's true.
And UCF and Minnesota, maybe not the most apt comparisons, but there's a few things to like between that UCF team and this Minnesota team. One of them being that they're both led by beloved younger coaches that the program is fully behind, the fan base really loves, the players really go to battle for.
Minnesota being coached by Arthur Fleck, the Joker. Yeah,
the Joker. Yeah, exactly. So one of Joaquin Phoenix's more impressive roles is leading Minnesota to a 10-win season. And so anyway, so that being said, it's just if this Auburn team kind of reminds me of a little bit of like a better version of Mississippi State from last season, if they remind me a little bit of that Auburn team from a few years back that beat Georgia and Alabama to end the regular season, both of those teams lost in their bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to say this one loses too, and Minnesota wins this victory. There we go. Row the boats.
There it is.
Row your boat. The All-State Sugar Bowl, January 1st, they got Georgia without their incredibly important offensive line coach who has gone off to Arkansas. Going up against Baylor.
But they got Matt Luke now.
They do. Georgia featuring Matt Luke. Baylor featuring, well, they don't have them yet, but they just recruited a whole bunch of Muppets to their team. So that's going to be interesting to see. National Signing Day was weird for Baylor. What's the spread on this one, Keith?
Georgia is a 6-point favorite, but it's not going to matter. Baylor wins.
Wow. Keith, why does Baylor win this?
I believe in Baylor, man. Like, they are 2 Oklahomas away from being undefeated and playing in the playoffs.
2 Oklahomas away. Is that a way of counting? 1 Oklahoma, 2 Oklahoma, 3 Oklahoma.
Yes.
You know what? They should have recruited the Count from Sesame Street to be on their team because he would have been able to count those Oklahomas, right?
They didn't get
1 Oklahoma.
And like, if anything in the history of Georgia football tells us anything, it's that when they lose the SEC championship and play in a meaningless bowl game, they poop the bed hard. Unfortunately, there's no steer to attack Uga this time.
There's not.
It's a full-grown bear.
They might have, get the Baylor bear. Does Baylor have a on-the-field bear? Because they really should.
They should, but also I hope not, because that thing would murder everybody in the stadium.
They should,
because bears are godless killing machines.
Godless killing machines. Bears, I've often called bears just giant dogs that want to eat you. That's really what bears are.
Very accurate description.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm with you on it. I mean, Baylor's just, I think, a better team. And exactly what you're saying. Like, Baylor was a legitimate, like, playoff threat this season. And I guess Georgia was too, but Georgia never looked all that good this year. They just didn't, They benefited from the hype. They benefited from last season, really. Georgia benefited from a good last year in order to keep where they were this season. And it just didn't end up well for them.
I'm sorry. You lost to South Carolina at home.
Yeah.
You don't get to be taken seriously for the rest of the year.
And you lost mostly because, like, you played like poop.
Yeah. It was like there were at least 6 times that South Carolina tried to give you the game in the second half alone.
Yeah.
And you weren't having any of it.
Yeah. You kept your receipts. You kept going up to South Carolina and being like, hey, I'm sorry, I don't want this.
I didn't buy this, sir.
Yeah. Please take this back. It's just dumb. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't even want to talk about this matchup anymore.
Nope.
Baylor's just a better team. Baylor's just a better team. All right. The last bowl that we need to talk about before we also talk just briefly about the national championship, because if we're both picking LSU to beat Oklahoma, we got to talk about who LSU is going to play against and who actually wins the national title this year. But before that is the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl.
Gator Bowl, Gator Bowl.
This is a sponsorship bowl combo that really sounds cooler than it actually is. Tax Slayer. You hear the Slayer part. You hear something about gators, which are terrifying monsters anyway. Yeah. And then you go back, you're like, wait a second, hold on. This is a tax program? Oh, this sucks.
Yeah. So, I mean, this could have very easily been the TurboTax Crocodile Bowl.
Yeah.
Not nearly as fun sounding.
TurboTax Vacation Gone Wrong Bowl. You know, it's just, it's not. So to add on to the mundaneness, the boringness of the name of this, the realistic name of this bowl, you got two boring teams. You've got historical basketball program Indiana going up against historical women's basketball program Tennessee. First of all,
Bruce Pearl program.
Tennessee. Yeah, Auburn legend Bruce Pearl. First of all, I mean, congrats to Tennessee for making a bowl after what we kind of expected at the beginning of the year to be a terrible season for them. They turned out to be a just okay team, and they've got their prize going up against just okay Indiana. What's the spread on this, Keith?
Tennessee's a 2-point favorite, so it doesn't matter.
God, that even sounds like a boring spread.
Yeah, this is the worst possible bowl matchup game.
Yeah. Do you care at all? Obviously, you don't, Florida fan, Tennessee involved.
Yeah.
But, I mean, do you really care at all about this game?
I don't. I am so I'm actually going back and looking at Tennessee's schedule and their, games. And even though Tennessee fans were literally on the ledge like 2 weeks in, like when you look at the year in total, it doesn't look bad.
No.
Like a loss to Georgia State's bad. I will concede that point. Like that's really bad. Losing to BYU at home isn't great, but BYU ended up having a decent year.
Yeah, they're always okay.
Yeah.
They just are. BYU is rarely great and rarely terrible.
Right. They are the definition of okay or fine.
Yep, that's it.
And their only other 3 losses the entire year were to top 10 teams. Yeah. Granted, they got murdered by those teams, but they lost.
Their best performance was against Bama, though, which is so funny.
Right. Well, that's Tennessee and Bama.
Yeah.
Like the first half of those games are always really close for no reason whatsoever, and then Bama is like, "Oh, we're playing a football game. Let's take care of us and go home." But yeah, so like Tennessee ended up having a really good year. Jeremy Pruitt definitely saved his job by, not. I think that state win was kind of the turning point, even though they lost to Bama the next week. Like that was a big win for them. Anyway, didn't mean to bring up bad memories.
I don't care. I mean, it wasn't good. Whatever.
And what's interesting also is that Indiana's only losses were to number 6 Ohio State, then number 25 Michigan State, Penn State, and Michigan. So again, nothing but ranked losses. So the good news for both these teams is that the other team isn't ranked.
So
they both have a chance to win.
It's a crapshoot again. Yay!
Yeah, I'm probably going to go to Tennessee just because they had the better season down the stretch. They seem to kind of put it together, whereas Indiana kind of stumbled down the stretch. And that's really it. Like neither team's overall stats are super impressive. Like Tennessee still has Jared Garantano as a quarterback, and he's not great.
Right.
But Indiana
and they can't always decide who they want to be their quarterback,
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure that Tennessee benched Garantano for like 2 games in there also. So and then he managed to like beat out the guy that beat him. So
right.
It's still a maelstrom of like bad, but not nearly as bad as it was 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah, exactly. There's always something to be said about carrying momentum at the end of the year. But I mean, that being said, like Indiana's 2 late season losses were a pretty close one to Penn State. I mean, a 1 touchdown game against Penn State. I didn't watch that one, obviously, so I don't know if that was like, if that score is like a,
if they scored some late.
Yeah, if it's a lie or not. But and then a loss to Michigan, so that's whatever. But I mean, that's 2 ranked teams that they lost to. They climbed into the ranking at one point in time. They were doing that well. And also, I mean, if we go back, and I hadn't mentioned it too much, but we go back to the old SRS, the simple rating system here. According to average margin of victory, strength of schedule, all of that, Indiana had a better season, a 6.9 to Tennessee's 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the Georgia State loss, the opening the season with 2 losses from Tennessee, that brings that down some, but Indiana just kind of did better. That being said, I think Indiana has the chance of getting a little bit more up for this game than Tennessee does.
I can see that.
And so I think for the 4th, 5th straight SEC bowl game prediction here, I'm going to go against the SEC, and I'm going to pick Indiana to beat Tennessee.
Classic.
Yep. Who you got?
I'll go Indiana also.
All right. There you are. I love it. I love it. All right. Finally, we have picked LSU to defeat Oklahoma. So on the other side of that, you got Clemson and Ohio State. Who plays in the national championship game against LSU, and who wins that title? Keith Harkins.
I was firmly on board with the Ohio State train to meet LSU in the final. And I really still want to pick that because, man, they've been a really high-flying team, really fun to watch all year. And it just would have been fun to watch those 2 teams play each other.
Yeah.
Not saying it won't happen, but and I think this is the case with a lot of college football fans and pundits or whatever, but it's hard to ignore Clemson beating a divisional champion by like 100 points.
Right.
Even though it is Virginia and they aren't really even in the same class, but like you still have to line up across from another grown man and outperform them every play. And they did that for the entire game. Like it was a clinic. And but I think I'm still gonna go with Ohio State.
All right. So who wins in that matchup, OSU and LSU?
I'm gonna go with Go Tigers.
Oh, national title winners, Louisiana State University fighting the Tigers, according to Keith.
My in-laws will love that pick.
Oh, good. That's what is really important here.
Yes, they're all rabid LSU fans.
I see what you're doing.
Super annoying.
That's why I'm picking the Seattle Seahawks to win, to please my in-laws. No, I'm actually, I'm going to disagree. I know. I think that I think this is going to be a situation where Dabo and Clemson are a little upset to not be getting the respect they think is due to them.
Yeah.
And being kind of overlooked a little bit here. And I think, plus, I think Dabo's he's a good postseason coach.
Mm-hmm.
He just is. He's kind of figuring out what to do, how to do it. And I don't know if Ohio State's quite got that yet. Figured out, they're a good team. I just don't know if they're a clutch team.
Yeah. Like maybe for the first time since they started doing the college football playoffs, like I could legitimately see 3 of these teams winning. And it would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But the tricky thing for me is picking that LSU and Clemson game though, because that would be it'd be a fascinating matchup.
Mhm.
Tiger
on tiger action.
Tiger on tiger action. Who really is the real Tiger? Who is the real DBU?
Death Valley versus Death Valley.
Oh my gosh, who's the real DVU? You like that? Do you like that? So, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's like, sorry, I was trying to pull up Clemson's stats on the year. Will Clemson's offense be good? Because I feel like there were some times this season in which like they weren't that great, but then at the same time, like you kind of look up and Trevor Lawrence has still thrown 34 touchdowns. You know, Travis Etienne is phenomenal as a running back with 1,500 yards, you know, that sort of thing. So it's like, I don't know. It's really difficult. I want to be able to pull for kind of honestly, the fact that LSU is kind of the heartwarming story this year.
Yes.
Which is weird to say because at no point in time before now has my heart ever been warmed, even thinking about LSU.
Yes. The heartwarming story of a fan base that likes to pee in bottles and throw it at their opponents.
Yeah. I have a friend who was at a
proposition people's wives.
Yeah. That was exactly what I was going to say. I had a friend who was at a game a while back. It was him and his wife and another friend of theirs and a friend's wife, and some guy, drunk LSU fan, came up to the friend and said, "Hey, how much for a night with your wife?" And they were like, and they ran away.
Really just want to win it for them, you know?
Yeah, you really do.
They've had it really hard.
Yep. But it really is like Burrow is fun to get. It's easy to get behind Burrow. It's honestly easy to get behind Coach O at this point, all of that.
Absolutely.
And so because of all of that, I have to pick Clemson, because if there's one thing about sports that we all know, the heartwarming story never works out in sports. It's why we make so many underdog movies. It's why we make so many like tales about the adorable underdog that, you know, pulls off the major upset, all of that, because
it has to happen somewhere.
Yeah. And that somewhere is fiction. In real life, the rich get richer. And right now, as great a season as LSU has had, Clemson is just kind of a better team, more prepared for the postseason. And I think Clemson's going to pull this one out and have another Clemson national title. So,
my only counterpoint to that is that LSU, and I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago, like LSU has played 5 top 10 teams.
Okay.
And won all of them. Texas ended up maybe not being really a top 10 team.
Sure.
You know, lost kind of beat them in kind of a neutral site, weird game early on. Like they went, I guess they played Florida in Baton Rouge, but like Florida went blow for blow with them until the fourth quarter. They managed to win that game. They beat Auburn, who gave them the toughest game of the year, before beating Bama, and then of course beating Georgia. So like they've had a lot of really, really tough tests, and
That's a great point.
Found ways to win. Not saying that Clemson was incapable of doing that. They just never really got the chance because they play in the ACC, where everyone's terrible and nothing matters.
Whose line is it anyway in the ACC?
Yeah. Basically, they're Drew Carey and everyone else is dumb.
According to Sports Reference, Clemson's strength of schedule was a below average difficulty. Just slightly below.
Yeah.
But it was below average. But I don't know. That's pretty weird.
That's my only real argument. Like I could totally see Clemson pulling it all off, because again, like they've been there before. This exact same team was there last year. They've, Dabo's a proven postseason coach. Like he knows what he's doing. Ed Orgeron, not so much. But
yeah,
he just hasn't had that opportunity yet, right?
Yeah.
So look, either LSU versus Iowa State or Clemson would be a tremendously fun game to watch, and
Yeah.
I'm pulling for either one of them.
You know, this might be the first championship game that I tune into.
Yeah, there you go.
You know,
and
in years.
in like a decade.
Yeah.
Since Cam Newton.
Since Cam, it might be. It might just be.
All of the sport, yeah.
I could find some entertainment value in all of this. So, there is our bowl episode. Getting it out there finally before we get into the full-fledged holiday season. When we get picks from Chandler and Rowe and Gray, then we'll throw them up on the old Twitter and Facebook, social media, all of that stuff, and share it with everyone. But that's going to wrap it up here in our bowl episode. A good season, I think, for Running Out the Clock. I think we did well as a podcast. Our simple rating system is going to be like a 28. 28 this season. Easily. Amazing season for us. Really
respectable 9-win season for us.
Yep, I think so. I don't think a 9-win season is going to get you a 28 on the SRS. I could be wrong on that.
You're right. We won 23 games.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Undefeated. Undisputed. Skip and Shannon. I should have been calling you Skip this whole episode. Should just be going, oh, no, Skip. Skip. Oh, no, Skip. So, all right. Well, I'm going to end this podcast and probably just retire from podcasting after embarrassing myself like that just now.
It's been a good run.
It's been a good run when we're done here. Obviously, next week and into New Year's being the big time holidays, we'll be taking next week off on the pod, jumping back in with more talk when we get back, and of course, shifting to some more regular basketball talk here on ROTC. Stay tuned for all of that. That's Keith Harkins. Keith, say bye to everybody.
Goodbye.
I'm your friend Joseph Craven. Thanks for tuning in, listening. Stay tuned, of course, because a very special Christmas episode of God Friended Me is next.